It's your boy Luke, back with another PGA DFS video, this time for our fades and sleepers for this week's Worldwide Technology Championship at Mayakoba. In this video, we're going to cover some of the most overhyped players for this week, as well as some of the guys being a little bit overlooked for GPP contests. Of course, the guys being overhyped are going to be our fades, and the guys being overlooked are sleeper picks. The goal here is to help you guys target some of the guys being a little bit lower owned this week that I think project really nicely, and of course, to help avoid some of those chalk plays that are going to go ahead and miss the cut. Of course, we'll be using a data-based approach as always here on the channel. We take a look at recent form. We also take a look at historical course fit to help determine some of the best plays on the slate. It's all shots gain analysis that I use with my custom modeling after I characterize a golf course and try to figure out exactly what type of skill set works best. There's a lot of correlation modeling involved. There's a lot of shots gained, conglomeration, everything like that. And overall, these plays are the best by the numbers. So without any more delay, let's hop right into it. First off with our fades here for this week. For our first fade, we have Maverick McNealy at $8,500. Somebody who's garnering too much ownership for me this week, especially considering his course fit. Typically, McNealy is somebody we try to target at courses with smaller greens. He's excellent around the green and tends to be good at hitting those smaller greens. Perhaps it's the smaller target, just a line of sight thing for him, but whatever the reason, he's definitely had most of his success at small green golf courses. So just like Pebble Beach, that kind of thing. That could be no more different here at El Camaleon. El Camaleon features some of the largest greens that we see on the PGA Tour at nearly 7,000 square foot on average. This is also a course that's not very difficult. A lot of those tracks that have those smaller greens also tend to be relatively difficult tracks. And here we're likely to see a winner between 18 and 22 under par. So that's definitely not going to be in McNealy's favor right there. McNealy is also somebody who leverages his distance very well. He's one of the longer hitters on the PGA Tour. And even given his frame, that's obviously a little bit surprising. Still gets it over 315 yards. Here at El Camaleon, that's not going to be as advantageous. You're dealing with a lot of dog legs here where you're forced to lay up. You're also dealing with a relatively short track. It's only 7,017 yards. So these guys are going to be able to hit hybrids or even irons off of almost every single tee and still have a mid iron into them at the very most. So McNealy, just not the best course fit here. I'd rather deploy him at a course with bent grass. He tends to be a little bit of a bent grass specialist. We have past Palm this week. Also like to put him out there at longer golf courses. Obviously that length a little bit more useful there. So for me, a nearly 13% ownership and not modeling well in terms of course fit or recent form, going to be a fade. Our next fade is going to be Matt Fitzpatrick at $8,800. He was somebody who played a prominent role in my player poll last week, but going to be a fade this time around just because the approach numbers haven't looked very good. If we take a look at his numbers over the last 36 measured rounds, is losing nearly 0.4 shots gained approach per round. That's not something we typically correlate with Matt Fitzpatrick. He's typically very long off the tee, very accurate, gains a ton of strokes there. Is typically a gainer on approach as well, pretty much across all four statistical categories, to be honest with you. Of late, has been his normal self in the other three categories, but on approach has looked like a shell of his former self. At a golf course like El Camaleon, where approach play is by far the most important statistic. I mean, off the tee, you're dealing with having to keep the ball in play. A lot of people are going to club down. And where you really make your hay this week is going to be into these greens, whether it's with the mid-iron, whether it's with the wedge, if you were a little bit more aggressive off the tee. Getting it done with the approach play is absolutely quintessential. So for Matt Fitzpatrick to be coming into play, a loser on approach, also somebody who's a little bit more expensive than I'd like to at $8,800, you'd expect him to be completely unowned. That's just not the case. Nearly 17% ownership on Fitzpatrick. So for me, he's a relatively straightforward fade this week. Next up, we have Billy Horschel at $10,100. Yes, $10,100 for a Horschel. It is not a typo right there. Obviously a little bit more expensive than he should be on this slate. And again, you'd expect him to be relatively low owned because of that, but that's just not the case. He's 13.5% owned right now in my projections. And even though he's a decent course fit, we've also seen him have some good results here at El Camaleon, highlighted by the 5th place finish last year. If we take a look at the recent form, just like Matt Fitzpatrick, the approach numbers are not pretty. He's somebody who's losing on approach over his last 36 measured rounds. He's been awesome with the putter. He's been pretty decent off the tee as well, hitting it longer than he usually has, which is a little bit surprising for Horschel. I don't think that's going to be useful this week. Again, this is one of the shorter courses on the PGA Tour, and with the extra distance that Horschel has added to his game over this last year or so, he's also lost 6% driving accuracy, which is significant, especially at a course like this that has so much trouble off of the tee. So even though he was in my GPP winning lineup last year, he was somebody who actually rode up before the golf tournament as one of my favorite plays. He wasn't $10,000. He also wasn't 13.5% owned. He was in the $8,000 range in single-digit owned. It is a completely different play this time around. He was also gaining strokes on approach going into that event last year. Now he's losing strokes on approach. So multiple things going against him there, and that's why he's going to be a fade for me. Now getting into the sleeper picks. First off, we have Rickie Fowler at $8,600. And just like we had at the CJ Cup, if you wanted to make a golf course for Rickie Fowler, this would pretty much be it. A course where off-the-tee accuracy isn't as important as long as you're clubbing down. And of course, your approach play is king, because Rickie Fowler of late has been one of the better approach players on the whole PGA Tour, especially from the 100 to 150 yard bucket. So if we take a look at his course fit ranking right there, it takes a little bit of a longer term approach for characterizing players. Not going to be very pretty. I mean, Rickie Fowler has had a really rough last year or two, and that's why you see that reflected there with the course fit ranking. But again, using logic, using the version of Rickie that we've seen over this past month, or even 2 to 3 months, to be honest with you. He's had decent finishes, whether it be at Kiawah Island, a decent finish at the 3M Open, and now, of course, over the last month, a few top 10s. I look for him to build on that. He's been gaining momentum over these last few months, much like a Jordan Spieth about a year and a half ago, who was showing signs here and there, making some cuts, posted a top 10, and then completely broke through. Rickie Fowler seems to be on the cusp on that same type of breakthrough. You can see it in the metrics. He's gaining with his ball striking at almost every single event, and he's having that hot putter pretty much pop once every 3 events. So if he ends up having that putter this week, the ball striking has been there pretty consistently. I think he has a chance to go out here and win this golf tournament. So expected to be owned to just 6.7% of lineups right now. So very easy to get leverage on him. Also coming in with better form than we've seen from him pretty much in the last 2-3 years. Really like going to him here at this event. Next up, we have Zalatoris, who's also another ball striking phenom, even more so than somebody like Fowler. Ever since Zalatoris has got onto the tour, it's just been absolutely striping his irons. So for me, to see him at $9,100 and also at single-digit ownership, I'm going to be all over that. It doesn't even make sense to me. This is somebody who should be clearly 15 to 16% owned at the very least. Comes in as the top 5 course fit ranking. Again, a lot of that has to do with the approach play. Has been one of the best iron players on the whole PGA Tour, let alone for this field. Off the tee, he's not one of the most accurate drivers of the golf ball, but we saw it at Sedgefield for the Wyndham Championship last year. He will create a game plan for every golf course he attacks, whether that's clubbing down in every hole to make sure that he's taking advantage of his precision with his irons, or taking driver and being aggressive at holes. He always uses the analytical approach. So knowing Zalatoris, he's going to club down this week. That is what the analytics tell players to do. It's what most players will be doing this week. And it's not like Zalatoris doesn't have the length to do so. I mean, this guy can hit a 3-iron longer than most people can hit their 3 woods. So really like him this week, as long as he takes that smart approach. Also single-digit owned. He hasn't had the best run, at least of very recent form. Missed cut there. Was decent at the Fortinet Championship at the very least. I do look for him to rebound. I do have a very strong showing here. And lastly, we have Brooks Koepka. And guys, anytime you have a single-digit owned Brooks Koepka, he's not going to be one of the higher-owned players on the slate. I am going to be all over this guy. People are going to question his motivation. They're going to question why he's even here. The truth is, when he shows up to golf tournaments, he's there to win them. He's not there to just show up to play something and leave town after missing a cut. There might be one time a year he does that. It's usually because they have a rule in the PGA Tour, by the way. You have to play a different event every single year. They call it the Tiger rule, essentially, so you can't go out, play the same 15, 16 tournaments every single year and never show up anywhere else. So there is a little bit of speculation that he's only showing up here to fulfill that requirement, but I don't think that's the case. Brooks is somebody who he's one of the best players in the world, right? We've seen him play well in the wind in the past. And if you take a look at just purely the numbers for this week, he's one of the best plays in the entire slate. Obviously, when he has his game, one of the best ball strikers in the entire world. In this field, ranks as a top 5 ball striker. Also somebody who, again, has played well in the wind, and that is a key here. At El Camaleon, the wind tends to whip, and even though the scores aren't necessarily as affected as they can be at other golf courses, you still have to be able to deal with that. So obviously the Open Championship, we've seen Brooks Koepka have a lot of success. We've seen him have success at US Opens, PGA Championships, just like Kiawah Island this year that had some of the windiest conditions that we've seen on tour. I really like him anytime he gets to that single-digit ownership mark. And even though he hasn't been in the best form of late, this is somebody who can flip the switch at any point. A lot of it comes down to motivation. So for me, Brooks Koepka at $10,000 going to be the number 1 sleeper pick. All for this week's fades and sleeper picks. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got first of all as your biggest sleeper pick for this week. and of course, who your biggest fade is. For me, you guys know who I've got. I think Brooks Koepka is a very good sleeper pick for this week. And of course, Billy Horschel, a little bit overhyped in my opinion, but go ahead and let me know what you guys think. I always love to hear from you guys. And of course, I appreciate all of your support here on the channel as well. If you guys haven't already liked the video, if you haven't already gotten a chance to subscribe, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. We're going to have even more golf content coming out throughout all of the fall. Of course, for the spring with the big golf tournaments, we have NFL content out on the channel. We're going to have UFC content coming out this week as well. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. Tomorrow, we're going to have a live stream for this golf tournament that'll be at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. We're going to go through all of my projections for the event. We're going to go through the player poll. We'll talk some game theory, any questions that you guys have for the live chat. Essentially everything you need to know for the event. We're even going to cover the weather and whether that's going to be a huge factor. So make sure to stop on by. A link will be in the description so you guys can go ahead and set a reminder for that. But until then, good luck with all of your lineups for this week, and peace.